Don't answer if it says your name twice. If it does, you didn't find your friend. Something found you. That was the last rule my cousin told me before he turned off the lights, and I laughed because hide and seek is a kid's game, not a warning, right? We only wanted one last fun night before summer ended, a memory to hold on to when the school bell rang again. But the house felt too quiet when the fridge hummed and the air vents sighed like someone trying not to be heard. It was simple. We played in the old rental by the lake where our family met every year, the wide house with the long hallway and the attic hatch that never closed right, always a finger-width gap like a half-open mouth above you. My cousin Theo loved making rules for our games. It made him feel like a director, like he could control the mood, the scares, the laughs, the ending. He said the rules were what kept the game honest. But this time, he added rules that didn't sound like fun. When you hide, take a pinch of salt in your pocket. If the seeker calls your name twice in one breath, don't answer. And whatever you do, don't hide in a place that faces a mirror. Because mirrors make two of you, and the wrong one might come back out. Theo said it with a grin, like he was half joking and half daring me to test it, and I rolled my eyes and pocketed my salt like a good sport, because it was our last night and I didn't want to fight. Our youngest cousin, Abby, bounced on the balls of her feet and asked if we were doing a real ritual, and Theo said no, it's just tradition, like knocking on wood or stepping over cracks. Superstitions are training wheels for the brain. But he still quenched the big living room lights and left only the kitchen nightlight glowing down the hall, a dim square of safety that looked far away, like a lighthouse you might never reach. I counted to 30 in the pantry, forehead against the cool door, breathing in the smell of onions and bagged bread, and when I hit 30, I felt the quiet folding around the house like a blanket. "Ready or not," I said softly, and I remembered the rule. Don't say names twice, don't face mirrors, keep the salt ready. The first place I checked was the hallway closet because Theo always hides in obvious spots to fake you out. He says the scariest place is the one under your nose. I opened the closet and felt coats brush my knuckles, and for a second I thought a sleeve tightened around my wrist. Just a snag, just static. But I shook free and whispered, "Boo," expecting a laugh, a yelp, a "you got me," but nothing came. I looked into the long hallway and saw the attic hatch above, the little gap of dark, like a sleepwalking mouth. Abby liked to hide under the long table with the lace runner, a white web that always tickled your hair if you slid in too far, so I kneeled and lifted the edge and saw nothing but chair legs and dust and one sock with little sunflowers. "Abby," I said once, careful, listening to the refrigerator hum and the house breathe and something else, a slow scrape like a chair being pulled on carpet upstairs. The scrape came again, a dry sound and then a tiny giggle, not Abby's, too low for Abby, and I felt my mouth go dry. Theo was the only one upstairs before the game. He went to check the windows because he hates reflections and always closes curtains at night. He says windows are like eyes and sometimes they blink. I walked up the stairs, each step making a soft pop that sounded like knuckles cracking, and I kept one hand on the wall because the railing felt too slick, like it had oil on it, like it didn't want to be held. At the top, the hallway mirror stood at the end, the long kind that makes you taller and thinner, and I stopped before facing it because of the rule. I turned my head to the side and looked from the corner of my eye, just enough to see a shape. Move, my shape. But the delay was wrong, half a heartbeat behind me, like it was remembering what I did instead of doing it. I swallowed, and the scrape came again, closer, and a small shadow ducked into the guest room that had 2 twin beds and a box TV with a green power light that never turned off. "Ready or not," I said softer, and pushed the guest room door, with my knuckles so my fingers wouldn't leave prints. Silly, as if the house might complain. The window was closed, curtains tied back like neat braids, and under the first bed there was only dust and a pencil and a button, and under the second bed there were 2 heels of shoes facing out, which was odd because no one puts shoes like that. "Got you," I whispered, and reached, and the shoes slid back an inch without a sound, like someone on their stomach dragged their feet away from me just to keep out of reach. I pulled up the bedskirt and saw nothing but the shoes, not attached to anything, and the air smelled like old wood and lake water. And in the side of the metal bed frame, I saw a dull reflection of my own eye, too large, as if the metal wanted to remember a version of me that was closer than I stood. I stood fast, heart banging in my throat, and then I heard it again. Giggle, scrape, moving down the hall toward Theo's room. His door was cracked, a hinge whispering as air moved, and I saw the corner of his flannel blanket on the floor, like he dragged it to make a trail. "Theo," I said once. Just once, because of the rule, and the blanket jerked a little, just a twitch, and then went still. I bent to pick it up, and when my fingers touched the fabric, I felt heat, not body heat, but something like a hand. Just left it, like the shape of fingers and the warmth that didn't belong to any of us. Behind me, a voice said my name in a soft sing-song, twice, in one breath, and I froze so hard my teeth hurt. I remembered the rule and kept my mouth shut, lips pressed until my jaw buzzed with pressure, and the voice waited, as if it was curious how long a mouth can stay closed. It drifted around me like someone circling in socks on carpet, barely a whisper of steps, and the voice tried again, softer, closer to my ear, my name twice, a little laugh tucked into the second time, like it found a new way to say me. I slid my hand into my pocket and felt the pinch of salt, little sharp edges like sand with teeth, and I thought, childish, and also, please work. I pinched the salt and let it rest on my tongue without swallowing, a grainy ocean taste that made my mouth feel sunburned, and the voice moved away, disappointed, or maybe patient. In Theo's room, the mirror on his closet door was covered with an old sheet, a habit of his since we were 8, and I saw the sheet breathe. Not the AC, not wind. It lifted and fell like a person hiding underneath, trying not to panic. "Boo," I said, whisper quiet, and the sheet rose, too tall, too slow, and then fell off the mirror completely, no one under it, the glass uncovered. In the mirror, my face was turned a little more toward me than my real face was, as if the reflection leaned in to hear me better, and my reflected mouth moved half a second late, and I wanted to vomit. I stepped back and my heel hit something soft and I spun, and there was Abby, hand to her lips, eyes wide, tears on her cheeks, shaking her head, and she mouthed, "Don't say it." She pointed at the ceiling where the attic hatch gaped its black smile, and I realized the scraping had been a pull, a body dragging against old wood, not to hide, but to come down. Theo would never hide up there. He hates the attic. He says it smells like dead rain and old nails, and the thought came cold. Then who opened it? Abby grabbed my hand and pulled me down the hall, but the voice followed fast now, excited, my name twice, Abby's name twice, both of us in one breath, like it was tasting how we fit together. We reached the top of the stairs, and Abby dropped to her knees and slid on the carpet like a kid, like she practiced it, and I followed clumsy, bumping my shin on the step, and we thudded down together, the sounds too loud, like claps in a church. At the bottom, the kitchen nightlight made a square of weak gold, and Abby dragged me toward it like it mattered where we stood, as if light did more than letting you see. In the dim, I saw Theo at the end of the hall by the front door, half in shadow, half in light, and relief burst in my chest like a match, until he lifted his head and his smile was just a little too slow, like the mirrors. "Theo," I said, and Abby squeezed my hand so hard my knuckles popped, and I snapped my mouth shut, one uttered name hanging in the air like a string that something might wrap around its fingers. His shoulders rolled, a stretch, a cat waking, and he said my name twice in one soft breath and lifted his hand like he was catching a ball that wasn't thrown. I felt a sharp pull in my chest, like a hiccup inside the heart, and the salt on my tongue stung hot, and I spat it in my palm and slapped it against my throat, a stupid move, desperate. And the pull cut like a rope frayed and let go. Abby let go of me and ran toward Theo, sobbing, and he opened his arms too wide, elbows a little wrong, and I shouted, "Stop!" and threw the rest of the salt at his feet like scattering stars. He flinched, small, barely, as if light wind hit him, and then he laughed. And the laugh sounded like two voices trying to agree on a tone, and I knew then that the rules were not a joke he made for drama. "Where did you hide?" he asked Abby. Sing-song, soft, sweet, too sweet, And Abby hiccuped and said, "In the laundry, behind Mom's coats." And the thing wearing my cousin smiled as if it had learned something useful. "Game's over," I said, voice shaking but firm, like a teacher who doesn't feel like one yet. And I backed us toward the sink because the house is old and the faucet has a filter that drips salty from the lake well. A taste we always complained about, a taste I needed. I turned the faucet and the slow water hissed, filtered through a cheap cartridge that never worked right. And I cupped it and flicked it toward Theo's shoes. Splash by splash, and he stepped back. Not much, but enough that I saw space where there wasn't before. He tilted his head like a mirror trying to find the right angle. And the kitchen nightlight buzzed, a long insect sound that felt like it was crawling on my spine. And he said, "Do you want me to count?" And my blood went cold. That was Theo's line when we were small, when he'd close his eyes and make it slow to scare us. "Do you want me to count?" But this voice pressed the words together, like it didn't care about the question, only the counting. "One," he said, and the room dimmed. Not the bulb, but the corners like someone exhaled shadow. And we slid along the counter toward the back door. "Two," he said. And Abby whimpered and grabbed a dish towel, white with strawberries, and twisted it like a rope because her hands needed something to do. And I kept flicking water, whispering please and sorry to nobody. "Three," he said, and I pulled the back door and it stuck in the swollen frame. The summer air making wood grow and jam, and my hands went slick with fear. And I almost called Theo's name again for help, and then remembered there are things that answer better than family. "Four," he said, and something above the doorframe tapped, like a fingernail, like attention, and the attic mouth upstairs breathed once, a wind through a throat, and the house leaned a fraction toward him, floorboards agreeing. "Five," he said, and I threw myself at the door, shoulder first, and it popped open so fast that Abby tumbled onto the porch, and I fell on my hands and knees and skinned them raw, and the night air rushed in, wet and full of lake smell, and my body remembered that there was a world bigger than rooms. "Six," he said. From the hallway now, the counting drifting, patient, not chasing, like the game could last forever and he enjoyed the quiet parts most. We ran into the yard, feet slapping the cool wood, and I pulled Abby into the grass, barefoot, blades sticking to our soles like little tongues, and we sprinted for the dock where the moon lay in pieces on the water. Theo reached the doorway and stopped, his head tilted, eyes like dark buttons sewn a little crooked, and I realized he could not step where the night air broke the shape of the house, like he needed the frame around him to be a mouth he could speak through. "Seven," he said, and I bent and scooped lake water, cold and alive with silt, and flung it in an arc between us like a necklace thrown wide. And Abby did the same, her small hands fast, splashing until her arms shook. He frowned then, a small child's confusion, and in the front window, the long hallway mirror caught a piece of us. But I kept my face turned, and I told Abby not to look, not to give the glass anything to hold. "Eight," he said, softer now, like he was losing the count, like he was tasting numbers that didn't sit right on his tongue. And I remembered the last rule Theo spoke with that half grin. "If you start a game, you have to end it or it keeps playing you." "You didn't say ready or not at the start," I yelled, and the thing in the doorway cocked its head again, and for a second the eyes were Theo's, tired and scared, and I almost went to him. "Say it," I said, throat raw. "Say, ready or not. Say it and let us hide, and we'll end it when we're ready." Bargaining with a rule like it was a door latch, he pressed his palm to the doorframe, fingers too long in the dark, and whispered, "80, like a word through teeth, and stopped. And the house gave a tiny groan, wood complaining, and I felt like I was asking a storm to be polite. Abby tugged my sleeve, eyes on the water, where the moon broke and reformed with every ripple, and she said, "We can hide in the lake," and that sounded like drowning. "No," I said, "we end it here," and I scooped more water and held it, hands shaking, cold burning warm skin, and I said, "This is the end," like closing a book. The thing in the doorway smiled again and started to count backward. 7, 6, and the wind came off the lake sudden and hard, flapping the porch flag, lifting the hair on my arms, and in that wind, the kitchen nightlight flickered, and the sheet in Theo's room lifted on the mirror as if someone under it took a breath again. 5, it said, and I splashed the water at my own feet. Not at it, drawing a line, making a boundary I didn't understand but believed in. And Abby copied me, small hands brave. 4, it said, and its voice cracked, and for a heartbeat,
I heard Theo underneath say my name once, just once,
and a please that sounded like a thread stretched tight. 3, it said, and I took the salt from my pocket, the last pinch, and scattered it into the lake, letting the waves take it and bring it back in thin, white seams. 2, it said, and I faced the yard without looking at windows, at mirrors, at anything that could show me myself, and I said, game over, as if I had the right. 1, it said, very soft, and then nothing, no breath, no scrape, only the refrigerator hum drifting out into the night and the porch flag rustling itself back to sleep. The doorway was empty. The attic hatch upstairs shut, not slammed, just settled, as if a mouth closed after a yawn and decided not to speak again. Abby cried quietly, relief burning on her cheeks, and I walked to the threshold with the last of the water cupped and poured it over the step. And the wood drank, and the house exhaled. We found Theo in the laundry room, sitting on the tile, head in his hands, salt spilled around him like a broken circle, eyes red like he'd been underwater too long. He looked up at us and his smile came all at once, not late, not strange, and he said, "Did you hear me?" And I lied and said no, because if I said yes, maybe he'd ask what he said, and I didn't want to make that real. We slept together on the living room floor after that, all three, the lake air sweet through the screen, the nightlight buzzing, and the house quiet in that way. A big animal is quiet when it's awake and content. In the morning, we ate cereal and didn't talk about the rules. Not the salt, not the names, not the mirrors, not the counting that tried to count us. Abby drew a picture with markers. A house with a smile and 3 stick people on the dock. And she colored the water blue and added little white specks and said, "Those are stars that fell in." And I said, "They're salt." And she looked at me and nodded like she already knew. Before we left, Theo covered the long hallway mirror again. Tight this time, tape on the edges. And he said it was just to stop dust, and I said sure, and we didn't look at our shapes underneath. If you ever play hide and seek in a house that breathes back, put salt in your pocket, keep water near, don't answer when someone says your name twice, and don't face yourself if you feel a delay. Games end when someone decides to stop, but not every voice that says your name wants you to win, and not every reflection wants to let you go. This was the last round we ever played, and when the school bell rang a week later, the hallway at school felt safer than the one in the lake house. And that's how you know a summer memory stuck wrong inside your chest. If you hear your footsteps behind you, don't turn around. Keep walking like you're still hiding. That was the rule written in red marker on the wall inside our old school's basement, right above a maze of peeling paint and rusted pipes where no student was supposed to go. When we were kids, we played hide and seek in the gym and the library. But never in the basement. Teachers said it was unsafe. My brother said it was haunted, and the janitor said, "It's neither. It's both," which felt worse than any warning. This started because my brother, Jay, wanted one last night inside the school before it got demolished. He said the place raised us more than we liked to admit. Our first friends, our first fights, our first trophies, our first mistakes. He wasn't wrong. The school was a long, square building with a locked basement that everyone talked about and no one saw. Rumors said there were tunnels under the auditorium, an old fallout shelter, and a pool that got sealed after a kid drowned. Half true, half lies, all sticky in our heads. We climbed through a broken music room window at sunset, when the sky looked like a bruise healing. The main halls were quiet, locker doors like shut mouths. Jay held a flashlight under his chin and said, "One last game, hide and seek." But with rules. He pretended to be casual. I could see his hands shake. He'd been looking up ritual games for weeks, laughing at how made up they sounded, and still writing their rules in his notebook like a believer who swears he doesn't believe. He showed me 3 rules he copied down. Do not look into uncovered mirrors after midnight. Do not answer if someone says your name while you're hiding. And if you hear your footsteps behind you, keep walking and don't turn around until you reach the exit. It's psychology, he said, trying to sound like a big brother again. Our brains want patterns. We give it rules, it calms down. We'll be fine. He gave me a tiny packet of salt he'd swiped from a fast food place and said, "For luck, or for your nerves." I wanted to throw it away to prove I wasn't scared. I kept it anyway. The basement door was chained until Jay pulled a thin pry bar from his backpack like he'd been planning this all month. He worked the chain loose and the door side open, a smell of wet concrete and old paper pouring over us. At the bottom of the steps, our flashlight beam wrinkled over a hallway of pipes, signs, and painted arrows to rooms that didn't exist anymore. On the wall, in faded red, the rules were there again, written by some other hand, years before Jay's notebook. Don't look at mirrors, don't answer names, don't turn around. See? Jay whispered. It's just stories. His bravado made him taller for 1 second. Then he pointed to a rusty fuse box and said, Base, like we were 10 again, picking a home spot that means safety even if the game goes wrong. We chose our timer, 1 song on a phone. When the music ended, hide and seek would start. The signal was simple and silly, and that helped. The song began. Jay walked away with the light, counting out loud. I found a narrow corridor and slipped behind a rolling cart stacked with old textbooks. The cement floor was cold through my shoes. Above me, the pipes pinged slowly like a tired heartbeat. The song ended. Silence folded around the basement. It felt like the building remembered us entering and was trying to decide if it would let us leave. At first, the game felt normal. I heard Jay's footsteps in the distance, the occasional tap of the flashlight on a pipe as he moved too close. Ready or not, he called, voice bouncing off walls. He didn't say my name. He knew the rule. I remembered summers when he would always be the seeker because he liked finding me more than hiding himself. He wanted to carry me back to base like a prize and say, got you, like it meant we belonged to the same place. Something small skittered. Maybe a rat, maybe a dropped screw rolling. I made myself breathe slow. I looked at the floor, at the way dust turns into a fog that never leaves. I believed I could wait out the fear if I didn't move. Then, softly right behind me, I heard footsteps that matched my heartbeat. Heel toe, heel toe. The sound was mine, the rhythm was mine, but I hadn't moved. I remembered the red writing on the wall. If you hear your footsteps behind you, don't turn around. My throat closed. I stood slowly, hands on the cart, and began to walk forward. I kept the pace steady, the way you walk past a dog you don't know. The steps followed, exactly matched, as if my shadow had weight. I thought about how many days I followed Jay down these halls when we were small, step for step, trusting he knew where we were going. Now something followed me the same way, like it loved me, or wanted to wear me. Don't be dumb, I whispered without sound. Keep walking, reach base, don't turn. My eyes began to water from holding them forward. There was a mirror on the wall ahead, an old safety mirror, cracked in a spider shape, meant for corners. I kept my gaze down. I didn't want to see if something walked where my reflection should be. The steps grew closer, almost touching my heels. I could feel breath that wasn't breath brush the back of my ankles like cold smoke. Found you, Jay said from somewhere to my right, and I flinched so hard my teeth clicked. The steps behind me stopped. I stared at the floor and asked, Base? My voice shook. Jay's light swung into view and spilled around my feet. He was smiling like he wanted me to feel silly and safe. Let's reset, he said. Too creepy back here. He didn't notice how I didn't turn to face him. I followed his light, eyes pinned to the ground, walking like a kid with a book on my head. We reached the old fuse box. The chalk circle Jay drew around it made our shoes white at the edges. Base. We laughed a little. Not happy but alive. You heard it, right? I asked. He shrugged too fast. Pipes, he said. Echo. Brains. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. He marked 3 more rules in his notebook, new ones born from panic. No splitting up far. No walking under the long mirror by the boiler. No saying each other's names unless touching hands. Last round, he said, and his voice softened. Promise. We switched roles. He hid. I counted with my hands over my eyes like a kid who still believes fingers can stop fear. The moment I started walking, the light changed. Not from my phone or my flashlight, those were steady. The air itself felt dimmer, as if the basement turned its face away. That's when the tapping began, steady, metallic, almost like knuckles lightly touching a door from the inside. Jay? I said, then covered my mouth, angry at myself for forgetting the rule. I picked a path I thought he'd choose, toward the old equipment room where trophies gathered dust and the glass in the door showed a stretched version of whoever approached. The tapping got faster. Then the basement tried a different trick. From behind me, I heard my footsteps again, matching me, half a breath late, like an echo learning to walk. Don't turn around. I kept forward. The equipment room door was ajar. Inside, a wall of trophies winked dull in the beam. A thin mirror leaned beside them, uncovered. The rules screamed in my head, no mirrors. But the room held a sweet memory. The first time Jay lifted me to see our names etched small on a plaque. Second place in a relay we ran together. I let one glance slip. One. The reflection showed the doorway behind me. In it, I wasn't alone. The shape had my height, my posture, and a tilt of the head I hate seeing in myself when I'm pretending I don't care. It stood close enough to breathe into my hair. I closed my eyes. I didn't turn. I stepped sideways into the room and bumped a trophy. The soft metal clatter felt huge. The shape in the mirror didn't flinch. I felt a small, almost tender tap at the center of my back, like a friend saying, "Go on." I walked faster. "Base," I whispered, even though I wasn't near it. I took out the salt packet and tore it with my teeth. The taste hit sharp and simple. I rubbed grains on my palms and the back of my neck like cheap armor. The footsteps behind me faltered, then matched again, stubborn, patient, as if copying even my fear. I realized then what scared me most. It didn't hate me. It wanted to be me so gently I could mistake it for love. A soft call came from the dark, "Here," in Jay's voice. Once, not twice. I followed it. The sound led me toward the boiler hall, where the long mirror hung opposite a line of old sinks. I kept my eyes low, counting floor tiles to stay steady. The air there was warmer, sour, full of old soap. I felt a tug on my sleeve, light at first, then firmer, like a child testing a parent's hand. "Not yet," I whispered to the tug. "I have to get him." The tug let go. At the end of the hall, I found Jay crouched, his flashlight on the floor, his palms pressed to his ears. He looked at me without moving his hands, eyes wide, jaw tight. I didn't say his name. I didn't touch him yet. He shook his head hard. "It's saying me," he mouthed. I understood. The thing had learned our names. It was speaking to both of us from different ends of the same hallway. I reached for him. He grabbed my wrist and squeezed 3 times, our old code for stay, stay, stay. Behind us, our footsteps came again, slow, matching, close. Ahead, beyond the mirror and sinks, Base waited around the corner. The way out. We stood together and started walking side by side, eyes down, hands linked. The mirror stretched our shapes. I let my vision blur so I wouldn't see if an extra hand held mine in the reflection. The steps behind us softened until they were almost breath. The more we ignored them, the more they leaned into us, curious, affectionate, needy. Halfway down the hall, the sinks sputtered, pipes groaning alive for the first time in years. Water dribbled from one tap, then another, a thin line catching the light like thread. Jay nodded toward them. "Salt," he mouthed. I pinched the last grains and rubbed them into the wet. I flicked the salty water over our shoulders, not turning, as if blessing strangers behind us. The footsteps paused. 1 second, 2. Then they changed. They stopped matching us and started counting us. 1 step, then another, then a third, like a teacher tracking misbehaving kids. The sinks gurgled and spat, coughing air. In the metal of the nearest faucet, I saw a tiny version of our hands. And behind them, a third hand reaching, palm open like it was just trying to catch up. I felt a sob get stuck under my ribs. I turned it into a laugh so small it didn't echo. "Almost there," I whispered. We reached the corner. Base around it. The chain on the basement door clicked in remembered rhythm as we imagined it, and the building seemed to hum low, like a throat clearing. The steps behind us sped up, happy, excited. I knew then it didn't want to hurt us the way a knife hurts. It wanted to include us like a game that never ends. That felt worse. We stepped into the chalk ring Jay had drawn by the fuse box. It was smudged, but still there, a thin moon on the floor. The footsteps stopped at the edge with a polite little scrape. I poured the last of the salty sink water across the line with my fingers and said, "Game over," steady, like a teacher who knows the bell rang 5 minutes ago. Jay echoed me once, careful not to say my name. The basement took a breath in. Then it let us go. We climbed the stairs without looking back. At the top step, something soft brushed my heel, a goodbye that wanted to be a hello. I didn't thank it. I didn't curse it. We slid out the same broken window and sat in the grass where the school lights used to paint gold squares at night. The building was quiet, not dead, just waiting for its own ending. Jay leaned his shoulder against mine. "Did you hear me?" he asked, like he needed to know his voice still belonged to him. Once, I said, and he nodded, relieved. He pulled out his notebook and crossed out the page of rules. On the next page, he wrote only one. If you hear your footsteps behind you, keep walking together. He tore it out and folded it small, slid it into my palm like a charm. The demolition crew came 2 days later. We watched from the sidewalk with coffee that shook in our hands as the machines ate the windows and chewed the doors. When the bucket hit the wall by the basement, a thin sound rose. Not a scream, not a groan. Something like children laughing into their sleeves to keep from getting caught. No one else flinched. The sound was only ours. That night at home, the hallway was too long and too quiet. I went to the kitchen for water, and on the way back, I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, matched to mine, a beat late. I froze in the doorway to my room, then I remembered the rule we made. I walked forward without turning. In the reflection of my bedroom window, I saw only my own shape, small and real. The steps faded like a friend who forgot what street you live on. If you ever play hide and seek where a place remembers you more than people do, carry salt if it steadies your hands, avoid mirrors if they make you late to yourself, and when you hear your footsteps behind you, keep walking. Some games end when you ignore them without hate. Some loves are traps with good manners. Either way, walk together until the door is open and the air feels like yours again. If the seeker knocks 3 times and something under the bed knocks back 4, don't hide, run. That rule was scratched into the wood underside of my childhood bed. A warning I used to touch with my fingertips the way other kids touch Lucky Charms before a test. Like wood could remember a prayer better than I could say it. When Dad packed the last box and said we'd sleep one last night in the old house before the sale, I felt 12 again, small and brave in the wrong ways, missing the person who taught me our dumb games and our smart fears, my older sister Leah, who used to seek me until her knees hurt and still swore she wasn't tired. The house had that empty sound after furniture leaves, where footsteps carry too far and your name seems too light for the rooms. And I told myself, one last game, to say goodbye the way Leah would have wanted, with rules and laughter and no mirrors uncovered after midnight. The rules in our family were simple. Salt in your pocket if it helps. Never answer when someone says your name twice. Don't face mirrors after the lights go off. And if the bed answers you wrong, you don't play at all. Leah wrote them on index cards and taped them in our closet like little white shields. After she was gone, I kept them up like dry leaves I couldn't throw away, fragile and loud when touched. That last night, the power flickered in the hall, as if the house was practicing blinking, and I felt the old courage come back mean and bright. I would be the seeker first, just like she taught me, because seekers don't wait for fear. They walk to it and make it say hello. Dad fell asleep on the living room floor, open boxes for walls and a coat for a blanket, mouth open in a soft snore that sounded like a tired engine. Grief makes sounds you start treating like normal house noises, like pipes and wind. I turned off the upstairs lights and left the small nightlight in my old room on, a square of safe gold that made the dust look like warm snow hanging in the air, too slow to fall. I put a pinch of salt in my pocket, heard Leah's voice in memory say, "It's not magic, it's focus." And I smiled because focus was easier when she said it like a secret we invented together. 30, I said to the quiet, the way she used to, as if the house needed a countdown before it let the game in. I started downstairs, then stopped on the landing where my feet always used to squeak. The squeak was gone. Wood healed after years, and that hurt in a way I couldn't name because the house felt less like ours and more like a mouth that had learned not to chew. In the hallway, the long mirror was covered with a tied sheet, a habit from our last winters here when shadows ran faster after 5. I kept it covered because some rules are just good manners in places that remember you. I checked the bathroom first, the cabinet second, the closet third, places Leah hated because of the small air that presses on your chest like a cat, whispering ready or not at each door. Soft, a song you only sing to show you're not scared of your own voice. I saved the bed for last, not because I was brave, but because the rule made my palms sweat and I didn't want to feel 12 out loud, not even to the walls. When I finally knelt by the bed, the nightlight made the space underneath glow like a stage where nothing curtain calls unless you ask it to, and I set my knuckles to the wood frame and knocked 3 times. Gentle, careful, polite, 1, 2, 3. Silence came first, big and thick. Then, from the dark under the bed, I heard nothing like a knock at all. It was breath, A child's breath, quick, stuttering, like someone trying to count without knowing numbers yet. The rule said, if it knocks wrong, don't play. The breath wasn't wrong. It was worse. It was almost my own when I used to hide too hard and hope Leah never found me, even while praying she would. Game over, I whispered on instinct, trying to end what I didn't start, and the air under the bed shivered like a hand touching cold water. A whisper said my name twice, one breath, small and careful, and the second time stretched the last letter as if tasting the edge of me. And I bit my tongue to keep from answering because some loves learn your name without asking, and not all of them should be fed. I stood, salt in my pocket, feeling silly and sharp. And I backed to the doorway with my eyes on the floor so I wouldn't catch my reflection in the nightlight glow on the glass of the picture frames. On the hall runner, a tiny track of white dust curved toward the attic stairs, a path so light it looked like chalk breath. Leah used to draw treasure routes for me, and this looked like one, except it led up to the door we never opened after dark because the hinge sounded like a voice clearing its throat. No, I said, to the air, to myself, to the old game I didn't want to play, and then a soft thump answered from the attic floorboards, 4 beats, slow, one more than I had knocked before. I wanted to call Dad. I didn't, because grief makes you stupid brave. And because I heard Leah's laugh in my head, the last good one, saying, "You don't win hide and seek by getting help. You win by holding the rule until it stops shaking." I climbed. The attic smelled like hot dust and memory paper. The single pull chain bulb swung lazy like a metronome for a song I didn't know, and I didn't pull it, because light in a space that wants you is like smiling at a stray dog. It thinks you said yes. In the dark, boxes stood like sleeping people who forgot their names, and the window at the far end held the moon in a narrow slice, a coin lost in a purse. "Ready or not," I said, not as a tease but as a contract. And under the window, a shape uncurled the way a folded coat remembers shoulders. "Leah?" I almost said, childish and raw, and I swallowed her name like a hot stone because the rule against answering names works both ways. Don't give yours, don't take theirs, not twice, not in one breath. The shape stood small, my height at 12, my slouch at 12, my nervous hands flex at 12, and a little sound came from its throat like a giggle learning to be a cry, and it lifted one hand and pointed slow at the floor near my feet. I looked down without moving my head. A circle of salt, years old, spilled and thin, lay around the attic hatch handle, as if someone had tried to keep what's up from coming down or what's down from going up, and I didn't like either option. The shape took a step, and the floor creaked the way it does when you know exactly which boards sing. Leah always knew them, and the creak I heard now had her rhythm, and my throat did that tight ache that comes before tears you refuse. "If you're hiding," I said to the dark, not to the shape, "I'm seeking." My voice steadied like a plate settling after you set it down right. But we end on base. And I pictured base like a lighthouse. The front door threshold where Leah used to tap my head and say, "Safe," even when I wasn't. The shape nodded. A little and then split, no sound, just a feeling. Like two people choosing different stairs at the same moment. One part stayed near the moon-slit window, small and lonely. The other slipped past me on the left side, the way Leah always passed me, so I'd feel the brush of her jacket as proof she was real. I didn't turn. I set my palms out to either side as if I could hold both paths with air, and I walked down into the hall, slow, careful, matching the steps I heard that weren't mine and were. The mirror at the end of the hall breathed under its sheet. A little lift, a little fall, and I thanked the past for covering it because gratitude is a rule too. The kind that makes old places spare you the worst of themselves. In my room, the nightlight flickered twice, like the house blinking sleep from its eyes, and the bed looked smaller than it felt when I was young. That's the trick of childhood. The safe places were always big enough to hide everything you were afraid of, until they weren't. I knelt again and pressed my hand to the underside wood where the scratched rule lived, and it felt warm, like someone had read it from the other side with their cheek. 3 knocks. 1, 2, 3, then 4 back, soft, like trying not to wake a parent. "Run," the rule said, and I didn't, because sometimes love is disobedient. Sometimes the right ending is staying put until what wants to chase learns how to leave. I slid the salt from my pocket, poured it in a thin line from the bed's foot to the door, not a trap, a path. Rituals work best when you make them into doors, not cages. Base, I said, and walked backward along the salt line. Eyes on the floor, hands open, slow, inviting any shape that was me, but not to follow the rule with me. No turning, no names, no mirrors, only the path. Behind the bed skirt, the breathing steadied to match mine, and a soft scrape moved across the wood like small knees learning to crawl again. And I felt a laugh break inside my chest and re-knit as something stronger. At the doorway, I stepped aside and let the line continue into the hall. Down the stairs to the front door threshold where the wood has our shoe prints pressed into it in ghost color. On the living room floor, Dad stirred and muttered Leah's name once in sleep. A sound like a match that never lights and still warms your hand for a second. I reached the door and touched the metal latch. Cool, present, real. Safe, I said to the threshold, the way Leah used to say to me. And I didn't look back because safety should be something you walk into, not check for like a receipt. The air behind me softened, as if someone set down a heavy backpack they'd carried too long. And the house exhaled, long and relieved, and in that breath was a child's small giggle turning into a sigh, like a game that remembered its own end. I stood there with my hand on the latch and thought about the rule under the bed, how it saved me by telling me to run, and how it saved me again by teaching me when not to. Some rules are fences, some are handrails. The ones Leah left were both, and the road between them was the shape of us, seeker and hider, learning to be the same person when no one is counting anymore. When morning came, we loaded the last box. I left the index cards in the closet for the next kid who will be brave in the wrong ways first and then the right ways after. At the curb, I looked up at my bedroom window. The glass held only the sky and a thin tree, no delayed reflection, no extra hand. The bed was still inside, and the rule was still scratched underneath, and the nightlight, bless it, had finally burned out. If you ever play hide and seek with a house that knows your name, remember this. Knock politely, listen closely, make a path, and end at base with your hand on a real door. Whatever follows you may only want a way to stop following. If this last story made your heart race but also feel a little warm, help grow this channel's dark library. Tap like to feed the algorithm. Drop a comment with the creepiest rule you grew up with, and subscribe with the bell so you never miss the next true feeling tale. Your one click keeps the lights low and the stories coming.